A quiet Texas neighborhood turned into something straight out of a courtroom drama when two imposters in tactical vests tried to detain a homeowner. But what they didn't know was that the man they picked wasn't just any neighbor, he was an FBI agent. It was a calm Saturday morning in Plano, Texas. The kind of morning where families mow their lawns and kids ride their bikes along cul-de-sacs. Reginald Carter stepped out of his brick two-story home with nothing more on his mind than taking the trash to the curb. But before he made it 10 steps, he spotted 3 figures waiting at the edge of his driveway. 2 men in black tactical style, vests with the words Community Enforcement stitched across their chests. And standing between them was Linda Whitfield, the president of the Homeowners Association. Neither Linda nor the men looked friendly. At first glance, they might have seemed official to a nervous neighbor, but Reginald immediately noticed the flaws. Their vests were mismatched, one too big, the other with Velcro straps dangling loose. Their boots looked worn and second-hand. And the way they stood, too stiff to rehearse, set off alarms in his head. Mr. Carter, Linda began sharply, as if she had practiced this moment. We need to talk. Reginald set the trash bag down and calmly placed his hands on his hips. About what? One of the men stepped forward. He was tall, pale, with a shaved head and mirrored sunglasses that hid his eyes. His voice was flat. Community enforcement. You're in violation of neighborhood regulations. We're here to detain you until police arrive. Detain me? Reginald repeated, his tone low, almost amused. Linda folded her arms. You've ignored repeated notices. This has gone too far. We can't have someone undermining our community rules. These men are here to make sure you comply. Reginald raised an eyebrow. And what exactly are the charges? The second man, shorter and broad-shouldered with a messy beard, pulled a folded paper from his vest. Property violations, non-compliance with HOA orders, unauthorized modifications to your driveway, loud gatherings, the list goes on. Reginald almost laughed. And you think that gives you the right to walk onto my property and, what did you call it? Detain me? The taller man's jaw tightened. That's right. You can come peacefully, or we'll make it harder on you. The air went still. From the corner of his eye, Reginald saw a curtain shift down the street. Someone was watching. Another window moved. Phones were coming out. He knew the pattern. Neighbors behind blinds recording everything. He took a slow step forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. Let me explain something to you. There is no such thing as community enforcement. You're not law enforcement. You don't have any authority here. And right now, you're trespassing. Linda's face flushed red. Don't talk to me about authority, Reginald. You think you're above the rules because of who you are? We've had real complaints, and I won't sit by while this neighborhood falls apart. The bearded man shifted nervously, but the taller one stayed rigid, his hand hovering near his belt. As if he wanted Reginald to believe he was armed. Reginald tilted his head. He had seen men like this before, wannabes who thought a vest and a stern look made them untouchable. What they didn't know was that he wasn't just a homeowner. He was a federal agent, trained to dismantle criminal networks and interrogate men far more dangerous than these two imposters. But he didn't reveal that. Instead, he simply smiled. You picked the wrong driveway today. Linda stepped closer, her voice rising. Don't test me, Reginald. These men can hold you until police arrive. And when they do, well, be the one answering questions. That's when Reginald let the trash bag slip from his hand, hit the pavement with a thud, a soda can clattering across the concrete. The sound echoed down the block not as a sign of surrender, but as a warning. Neighbors leaned closer to their windows. A teenager across the street raised his phone, already recording. This wasn't just a dispute between a homeowner and the HOA president anymore. It was about to become a neighborhood spectacle, and as tense as things already were. The real test of control was still ahead. More phones appeared in windows. Someone even stepped onto their porch, recording openly. Reginald's voice dropped. Low meant for the imposters, but loud enough for every neighbor to hear. You want to know what real authority looks like? It's not to men playing soldier. It's training, it's law, it's accountability. And trust me, real cops will be very interested in this little performance. The bearded man's throat bobbed. His confidence was slipping. But the tall one doubled down, stepping so close his boots nearly touched Reginald's. I'm not playing. You're in violation. If you resist, we'll restrain you. Don't test me. Reginald didn't flinch. He leaned in slightly, his voice calm, but sharp. Son, I've dealt with cartel enforcers who were less reckless than you. Do yourself a favor, step back before this turns into something you can't walk away from. For the first time, doubt flickered across the tall man's face. His tough act was cracking under Reginald's composure. Linda, refusing to lose ground, barked, "Why should the rest of us live by the rules while you do whatever you want? We have a system, Reginald. We have order. And if you won't respect it, maybe you don't belong here at all." Reginald's gaze locked on her. Respect isn't forced with fake cops and threats. It's earned. And right now, this isn't about rules. It's about control. The words hit harder than she expected. For a moment, her confidence faltered. But she quickly folded her arms tighter, trying to hide it. The bearded man shifted uneasily. "Maybe we should wait in the street," he muttered. But the taller one snapped, "No, we're not leaving." Reginald let out a long breath, studying them. He knew their type. He'd interrogated men who lived on intimidation, men who mistook fear for respect. And he knew exactly how to dismantle them without lifting a hand. He turned his attention back to Linda. "Tell me something. When you called these two clowns, did you think this through? Because the second the real police roll up hand, trust me, they're on their way. They won't be asking me the hard questions. They'll be asking you why you thought you had the authority to stage an arrest." Linda blinked. Color drained from her face. From across the street, someone shouted, "Leave him alone." The voice carried down the block, and suddenly this wasn't just a dispute. It was a neighborhood standoff. Reginald's eyes stayed locked on the imposters. "This is your last chance. Walk away before the whole block watches you hauled off in handcuffs." The bearded man twitched, his resolve slipping. But the tall one clenched his fists, desperate to hold on to the illusion of power. What they didn't realize was that the neighborhood itself had turned into a jury. Curtains weren't just shifting, any more windows were opening. Doors were cracking ajar. Neighbors were stepping onto porches. Phones raised high. Across the street, the Hendersons, a retired couple, stood side by side, whispering to each other. "Never seen anything like this," Mr. Henderson muttered. His wife shook her head. "I told you Linda would go too far one day." Reginald caught fragments of their words, but kept his focus on the men. Every detail was catalogued: the sloppy gear, the tall man's nervous glances down the street, the restless twitch of the bearded man's hands. They weren't professionals. They were actors in a play that was collapsing then. From the sidewalk, a teenager, Marcus Johnson, who Reginald had seen shooting hoops before. "Higher. Yo, Mr. Carter. I got you on live. Thousands are watching." The taller imposter snapped his head toward him. "Put that down," he barked, stepping toward the boy. "Wrong move." Reginald shifted instantly, planting himself between the man and the teen. His voice cut sharp and cold. "You even think about touching that kid, and this ends right here." The imposter froze. For the first time, he realized Reginald wasn't intimidated. Not even a little. Linda, flustered, tried to regain control. "This is a neighborhood matter. None of you should be interfering." But her words backfired. From a porch, a woman, with a baby on her hip, shouted, "Neighborhood matter. Looks like harassment to me." Other voices chimed in. "This is wrong. Where'd you even find these guys? You can't arrest your neighbor for cutting his grass too short?" What was supposed to scare Reginald had turned into a trial of Linda and her enforcers. Reginald let the crowd's words hang in the air before speaking again. "Do you hear them, Linda? This isn't order. This is chaos, and you created it." Her jaw clenched, her voice trembled. "You're twisting this, Reginald. Been a problem bending the rules, ignoring the standards we worked so hard to build." Reginald studied her. "No, Linda, the real problem is that you confuse control with leadership. They're not the same." That line carried through the block like a verdict. Neighbors whispered, nodded, kept recording. The bearded man wiped sweat from his forehead. "Look, man," he muttered, "maybe we should just go. This isn't worth it." But the tall one hissed, "No, we finish this." He squared his shoulders, trying to look bigger. "Last warning, you either come with us peacefully or we'll use force." Reginald almost laughed. "You really want to do this? In front of every witness? With half a dozen cameras on you? Go ahead. Show the world who you really are." The tall man faltered. His eyes darted to the glowing phones, the murmurs of the crowd, the weight of judgment pressing in from all sides. Linda stepped forward again, desperation seeping into her voice. "Don't listen to him. He's manipulating you all. He thinks because of his job." "Careful, Linda." Reginald cut her off sharply. He didn't need to raise his voice. The force behind his words silenced the block. He turned back to the imposters. "Listen carefully. You've got two choices. Leave quietly and pray the police don't charge you with impersonation, or keep pretending you have power and let this neighborhood watch you get dismantled in real time." The bearded man swallowed hard, eyes flicking to Linda. She gave a tiny shake of her head, clinging to what little illusion of control she had left. But across the street, Marcus shouted, "They're done. Mr. Carter, we all see it." The crowd erupted with agreement. Reginald stayed still, letting the neighborhood itself become his ally. He didn't need to threaten them. The truth was already pulling their disguise apart. Then, just when it looked like the imposters might fold, the tall one made a reckless choice. With a sudden motion, he yanked a pair of metal handcuffs from his vest. The cuffs clanked loudly, slicing through the chatter of the street. The crowd gasped as if they'd felt the cold steel themselves. "You're under neighborhood arrest," he declared, his voice cracking just enough to betray the bravado he was trying to hold. "Don't make me put these on you the hard way," the tall man warned, dangling the cuffs. Reginald's eyes locked on the steel, then flicked back to the man's face. His voice was slow, precise. "If you take one more step toward me with those cuffs or committing a felony, impersonating an officer, attempted unlawful restraint, that's prison time, not community service." The man's grip tightened, but his confidence wavered. His partner whispered harshly, panic in his voice, "Eddie, this is crazy. We can't actually cuff him. We'll get locked up ourselves." "Shut up," Eddie snapped, loud enough for the whole street to hear. Linda tried to salvage the moment, raising her chin and projecting her voice toward the watching neighbors. "Don't let him scare you. This is a law-abiding community. We have every right to enforce standards. He's just trying to bully his way out." But her words fell flat. Murmurs of disapproval rippled across the block. "You don't have the right, Linda." One neighbor shouted. "Isn't enforcement, it's harassment," yelled another. Reginald leaned closer to Eddie, his tone sharp as glass. "I've seen real cuffs. I've used real cuffs. And I know when a man is bluffing. Drop them." Now before this turns into something you'll never walk away from. Eddie's jaw clenched, pride at war with reality. His bearded partner tugged at his sleeve, his voice trembling. Come on, man. Cameras are rolling, we'll get fried. For this, but Eddie shoved him back. I said, I've got this. He stepped forward, thrusting the cuffs out like a weapon. The crowd audibly recoiled. Someone screamed, call the cops. Dozens of phones tilted, capturing every second. Reginald didn't move back. He didn't flinch. Instead, he squared his shoulders and said in a low, steady voice, you're one heartbeat away from destroying your life. Think hard before you take that step. For the first time, Eddie hesitated. Sweat trickled down his forehead, glistening in the Texas sun. His hand shook just enough for everyone to notice. The authority he had tried to project was cracking like glass. Linda, desperate, shouted, do it. Don't let him intimidate you. Put him in cuffs, show the neighborhood who's in charge. Her words backfired. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man 3 houses down yelled, Linda, you've lost your mind. You're not the police. Others chimed in, voices rising against her. Reginald seized the moment. His voice rose, calm but commanding. Everyone here sees what's happening. This isn't about rules. This isn't about violations. This is about power, fake power. And these men, they're being pushed by someone who doesn't know the law, doesn't respect the law, and thinks intimidation is leadership. The bearded man dropped his gaze, shame flooding his face. I didn't sign up for this, he muttered. Eddie glared at him, then at Linda, torn between pride and fear. But before he could decide, Reginald closed the space between them. His eyes locked on Eddie's. His voice dropped into that chilling register only professionals carried. You lay one finger on me, and I promise you the real police won't even have to ask me who you are. They'll already know. Because I'll walk them through every mistake you've made in the last 10 minutes. You think you're intimidating me, son? I dismantle men like you for a living. Asterisk, the words struck like a hammer. Eddie froze, his arm locked midair. The handcuffs dangling USELESSLY. The crowd didn't cheer it, rumbled, voices overlapping in agreement. He's right. Leave him alone. You're done. The street had chosen its side and it wasn't with Linda or her imposters. Reginald straightened, his posture calm yet unyielding. Here's the truth, he said evenly. This is the end of your game. You have no authority, no power. And the longer you pretend, the deeper the hole you dig. Eddie's shoulders sagged, his grip loosening on the cuffs. The bearded man took another step back, his confidence unraveling. But Linda's fury only grew, her face blotched red, her voice rising to a shriek. You don't belong here. You never have. That's why you fight so hard. The words were ugly and raw, hanging in the air. The neighbors murmured, their tone sharpening into outrage. That's enough, Linda, someone shouted. You're exposing yourself. Another added, louder. Reginald didn't flinch. The sting of her words wasn't lost on him, but he held steady. He looked at her disappointment written in his eyes before turning back to Eddie and his partner. Walk away now, he warned, because the next chapter doesn't end with you going home. It ends with flashing lights, handcuffs, and charges you can't explain away. But Linda wasn't finished. Her desperation pushed the imposters toward their most reckless move yet. The standoff boiled. Eddie still gripped the cuffs like a lifeline, his arm hovering as though stuck between fight and surrender. Sean, his name caught in a whispered exchange, looked ready to bolt. Linda stood in the middle, trembling with rage, barking orders no one obeyed anymore. Reginald let the silence stretch, then spoke, his voice calm, not loud, but carrying undeniable authority. Eddie, Sean, do you even know what happens to a man who impersonates a federal officer? Forget HOA bylaws. Forget state charges. I'm talking federal law. Do you know the minimum sentence? Eddie blinked, lips parting as if to answer. But no words came. 3 years, Reginald continued. That's if you're lucky. If you escalate, if you lay a hand on me, we're talking assault, false imprisonment, conspiracy. Do the math. Sean's eyes widened, the fight draining out of him. Linda, he's not joking, he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Don't listen to him. Linda snapped. He's bluffing, trying to scare you. But Reginald's gaze cut through her. You've already lost, Linda. The crowd knows it. Your neighbors know it. And deep down, you know it too. The murmurs grew. A mother clutching her toddler whispered, He's right. This is insane. Finally, Eddie's arm dropped. The cuffs hung heavy at his side. Reginald stepped forward, his tone shifting calm, conversational, but sharpened by experience. You know the difference between real authority and fake authority? He asked, eyes moving between them. Accountability. Real officers answer to the law. Fake ones answer to pride. And pride will get you locked up or worse. Eddie shifted uncomfortably, sweat beading on his temple. This community deserves better, Reginald pressed. Not fear tactics, not fraud. Real leadership comes from respect, not intimidation. Linda barked a bitter laugh. Respect. Don't lecture me about respect. Do you know how many hours I've poured into this neighborhood? People want order. Reginald. Order doesn't come from force, he countered, steady as stone. It comes from trust. And trust dies the moment you bring in fakes with vests and threaten your own neighbors. Eddie swallowed hard, his voice trembling. Maybe he's right, Linda. Maybe we should go. No, she snapped. If we walk away now, I lose everything. Everyone will see I can't handle my job. Sean's patience finally snapped. This isn't about your reputation. I'm not going to jail for you. I didn't sign up for this mess. He ripped the Velcro patch from his vest and tossed it to the ground. The flimsy fabric fluttered across the pavement like a confession. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones zoomed in. The illusion cracked apart piece by piece. Reginald fixed his gaze on Eddie. That's one down. What about you? Eddie's hands shook, the cuffs rattling against his thigh. His bravado cracked the scared man behind the mirrored shades finally exposed. Think carefully, Reginald warned, his voice low, almost intimate. Linda won't be there when the police come. She won't sit beside you in court. She won't do your time. She'll save herself and leave you behind. The crowd fell silent, hanging on his every word. Eddie let the cuffs slip from his hand. They clattered against the pavement, louder than Linda's protest. No, Linda screamed, stomping like a child. Pick them up. Don't let him win. But Eddie didn't move. He stepped back, chest heaving with regret. Reginald straightened and locked eyes with Linda. Leadership isn't about winning, it's about responsibility. And you've failed yours. The neighbors erupted, no applause, but a tidal wave of voices. He's right. She's gone too far. We don't want this anymore. Linda's face drained pale. The power she thought she had was slipping. Through her fingers, Reginald bent down, lifted the cuffs, and held them high for the crowd. This is what happens when you confuse control with justice, when you mistake fear for respect. But this, he said, shaking the cuffs, isn't justice, it's fraud. The cuffs gleamed in the sunlight, punctuating his words. But before the neighborhood could breathe, Eddie made a reckless choice. His pride wouldn't let him walk away. Chest heaving, sweat dripping, he lunged past Sean and charged at Reginald. The crowd gasped, phones tilted to capture every second. Don't touch him, someone shouted, but Eddie didn't hear. He grabbed for Reginald's wrist, desperate to force the cuffs back into play. That was his final mistake. In one fluid motion, Reginald moved sidestepping, seizing Eddie's arm and twisting it behind his back with surgical precision. The cuffs Eddie had dropped just moments earlier were suddenly in Reginald's hands. In one fluid motion, they snapped shut around Eddie's own wrists before he could even process what was happening. A sharp cry escaped Eddie, more shock than pain as his knees buckled against the driveway. The entire move had taken less than 3 seconds. Gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. "Did you see that?" Someone yelled. "He didn't even fight, he just moved." Another voice called. Reginald didn't gloat. He applied only the minimum force needed to hold Eddie steady, his voice calm and professional, as though he were running a routine drill. "You're done. Don't resist. That will only make this worse." Linda's face contorted in horror. "What are you doing? You can't arrest him." Reginald's gaze snapped to her sharp, cold. "You're right. I can't, but I can detain him for impersonating an officer until the real police arrive. And considering he just attempted to assault me on my own property, the charges keep stacking." The crowd roared against him, clapping, others shouting. "At Linda, you set this up." One neighbor yelled. "This is on you, Linda." Another added. Sean, already stripped of his vest, backed away with trembling hands raised. "I'm out. I'm done. I didn't sign up for this." His voice cracked. "Lady, you never told us he was law enforcement," Reginald cut in, steady as stone. "That's because she didn't know." Linda blinked, her confidence faltering. What are you talking about?" Keeping one hand firmly on Eddie, Reginald reached into his back pocket. With practiced ease, he pulled out a worn leather wallet and flipped it open. A golden badge gleamed in the Texas sunlight. "I'm Special Agent Reginald Carter," he announced, voice carrying across the street. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." The neighborhood fell silent. The only sounds were the rustle of leaves and Eddie's ragged breathing as he knelt in the dust. Mrs. Henderson whispered to her husband. "I knew he carried himself different." A teenager, still recording, shouted, "No way, he's FBI." Every phone captured the badge, the authority in his tone, and the stunned look on Linda's face as reality hit her. Reginald's eyes locked on her. "You came onto my property with imposters. You endangered your neighbors because you thought intimidation meant control. But you didn't do your homework. You had no idea who you were dealing with." Linda's lips quivered. This is abuse of power. You can't just..." He cut her off, his voice like steel. "Abuse of power. That's rich. You staged a fake arrest over an HOA dispute. What I'm doing is lawful. What you did is criminal." The crowd's murmurs shifted, sharp with disgust. Every word Linda tried to muster only buried her deeper. In shame, Reginald steadied Eddie and addressed the neighbors. "Let's be clear. This isn't about lawns or driveways. This is about people pretending to have authority they don't. People who think fear equals leadership. That ends today." Eddie groaned, sweat soaking through his shirt, while Sean lingered at the edge of the driveway, desperate to disappear. "You're making a spectacle of this. You're humiliating me." Linda cried, her desperation finally spilling over. Reginald's expression softened, though his voice didn't. "No, Linda, you did that yourself. You put this entire neighborhood at risk because you couldn't stand the thought of losing control." Phones kept rolling. The badge glinted again in the sunlight, proof that everything had changed. "Here's the part you need to understand," Reginald said, his tone low but commanding. "Real power doesn't come from fear, it comes from service. From protecting people. And when you fake authority, when you cross that line, there's always a reckoning." Linda shook her head violently, denial collapsing into pleading. This isn't how it was supposed to go. You weren't supposed to fight back? Reginald's final words cut through the silence like a hammer. No, Linda. That's because you never expected to meet someone who knows what real authority looks like. The street froze, stunned. Cameras zoomed closer. What had begun as a petty HOA stunt had transformed into something far greater. Asterisk. The flashing red and blue lights painted the street in alternating waves of chaos and order. Neighbors lingered, unwilling to retreat inside, as if they knew they were witnessing the kind of reckoning that would be remembered long after the sirens faded. Reginald remained calm, standing tall on his driveway, the living proof that intimidation could be dismantled with nothing more than truth and resolve. The officers worked with quiet efficiency, cataloging witness statements, confirming footage from phones, and securing evidence that would seal the fate of Eddie, Sean, and, most importantly, Linda. Linda herself looked smaller than she ever had. The confident posture she once carried at HOA meetings, where every voice bent to hers, was gone. She stood trembling, her words hollow, her neighbors avoiding her gaze. A woman who had wielded authority like a weapon was now crushed beneath the very law she claimed to uphold. An officer approached her. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come down to the station as well. There are serious allegations against you: coercion, misuse of authority, and possible conspiracy to commit unlawful restraint. You'll have the chance to speak, but right now, you're not free to leave." Linda's lips parted, but no sound came. Her neighbors didn't rally behind her this time. They didn't argue or defend. They simply stared, the silence heavier than any verdict, as she was led toward the second squad car. A murmur passed through the crowd, disbelief giving way to catharsis. For years, Linda had been the unchecked voice of control in their community. Now, she was just another defendant under flashing lights. Sean, still shaking, finally broke his silence. "I didn't want this. I just went along with it. I didn't touch him, I swear." His voice cracked, a desperate attempt to distance himself from Eddie and Linda's downfall. But even he couldn't escape the cameras. His role, however, reluctant, was recorded in every neighbor's phone. Reginald finally turned to the crowd. Hey, his voice steady, carrying the weight of both authority and reassurance. "You all saw what happened tonight. You saw how quickly a community can be manipulated when fear is disguised as leadership. Remember this moment. Real power is never taken, it's earned through integrity. And when someone tries to steal it, it's your duty to stand against them." The neighbors nodded. Some even clapped softly, a ripple of support growing across the street. It wasn't loud or celebratory, it was relief. Relief that the truth had prevailed, that intimidation had been unmasked, and that their neighborhood would no longer bow to false authority as the squad cars pulled away, taking Eddie, Sean, and Linda into the system they had tried to exploit. The air felt lighter. Parents guided their children back inside, whispering lessons about courage, justice, and standing tall when it mattered most. Reginald remained on his driveway for a moment longer, watching the lights disappear into the distance. For him, it wasn't about victory. It was about balance restored. The community had seen the difference between fear and respect, between intimidation and law. And that lesson would echo louder than Linda's voice ever had. And as the night finally quieted, the neighborhood knew one thing for certain: things would never be the same again.